The gravity of the time is such that every new avenue of peace, no matter how dimly discernible, should be explored. Never before in history has so much hope for so many people been gathered together in a single organization. You will provide a great share of the wisdom, of the courage, and the faith which can bring to this world lasting peace for all nations and happiness and well-being for all men.
So we are here today with Zion Light, who is a science communicator, environmentalist, coming all the way from the UK. Welcome to Titans of Nuclear.
Hello, thanks for having me, Brett. Very
excited.
No,
I'm so excited to talk to you. I mean, I first heard you on Chris Kiefer's podcast, Decouple, which is the best podcast ever. Everyone should always listen to it. And then got a chance to meet you, I guess, a month ago or a few weeks ago on video chat. Obviously, some mind melding going on. So super excited to talk today.
Yeah, it's funny how it falls into place like that sometimes.
Yeah. So maybe, start off with your background a little bit. First off, actually, can we start off with a little more casually? You have a cool name. Do you have like a story where that name comes from?
It's quite a long story actually. Yeah, it's to do with the national park in America.
Oh, very cool.
But
so Zion, did I say it wrong?
Well, I go by Zion because of the whole mess that opens up if someone thinks you're called Zion. Slightly adapted that. I have to say it's an interesting thing because in Indian culture, so my parents are Punjabi Indians. They migrated here in the 60s. Did grow up in a very Indian household, which most people don't realize, very working class, very Indian. And all the kids are like very whatever westernized now because we're second generation. But in Indian culture, the name thing is just not the same issue. I had uncles I would call a certain name, and it was only when I was an adult that I found out that wasn't their real name. Like literally, like they're just nothing to do with their real name. And I'd be like, how come that's their name? And they'd say, oh, we will always just call him by his nickname. We never go by the certificate name, they call it. Oh. And in India, when I visited there, because they don't have passports or birth certificates. They don't have any of that, right, in the villages. They don't have names on paper. Their names just change. Like their names just totally change. They just go by. Really, I know it's really kind of bizarre, but in a way, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And I've kind of embraced it.
So, did you spend a lot of time in India growing up?
Oh, no, I didn't. I completely grew up here. They took me once when I was a kid. Yeah. I really vaguely remember meeting one of my grandparents, but they all died quite young by our standards, so I don't have many memories of them at all. And I went again in my 20s. My dad was like, come on, you got to meet all the family and they all love you and they all know who you are. And I had very little contact with them, really. They don't have Zoom out there. It's like occasionally they get to a phone and you speak to them on the phone. It's mostly letters. They would send these 2-envelope letters in the post. It smelled like India's, I thought. They're written in Punjabi, which I know a little bit of, but I didn't learn it formally. I could speak Punjabi and Hindi, but I didn't learn them formally. And then I went over there and was like, wow, what is this? Is this where you came from? Because they always painted a very rosy picture, although thinking about it, of course, came from poverty.
Yeah.
You really have to see it to understand. And if they didn't have any photos or anything as well, to be fair. They had nothing to show me. I went there and I went, you grew up in this little hut? Like seriously, one room with 11 kids? Like, is this serious? Is this serious, Dad? You never told me this? And he just was like, well, it's normal over here. And then I kind of thought, well, it is. It was really, really eye-opening for me in my 20s, just what they'd come from and how hard they were to escape it. But they always missed it as well because most of their families there, they got left behind. They didn't get to come. They weren't young workers. And it was a bit of a lottery anyway of who they picked when they wanted factory workers over here and who they let come. So my dad came, but his sister's still there. And she just lives without her brothers. So my dad and his 3 brothers came. They were picked because they were men. And she stayed there on her own. And it's really sad actually, because the way she lives, I felt really sad the whole time. I looked at how she lives and how just cooking over, like wood, little stove. that's even with my parents sending money so they can get in like, bags of food. There's just money can only go so far. There's no infrastructure, there's no sewer system, there's nothing. I mean, I know you know this, but really when I saw it, I just thought, wow, this people need to understand
Well,
that
that's
so
what I
many
wanted to
people live
ask
like
you.
this.
Did an experience like that inform your thoughts around environmentalism and and just like, poverty and energy prosperity and the differences, and did this play a role in it?
Absolutely, but what I'd say is that I found it very hard to kind of like growing up as a British person, very British, identify as British Asian or whatever, British Indian, also having this Indian background. Because I haven't lived there, but I've lived in the culture. And it's the same thing in environmentalism. You kind of go in, and I've never been able to make a background fit in environmentalism. I think this is widely, a lot of people are discussing it now. It's widely understood. It's a very white middle class movement.
Yeah.
And I'm very non-white, working class background, daughter of immigrants, coming in with my ideas. And I think a lot of the time people have just gone, what is she saying? What is she talking about? And there is this idea of like the idyllic, going back to nature. And I wrote a book about lowering your carbon footprint, so I kind of spun some of those ideas, but it was more because I just thought, well, I don't know what the solution is otherwise, but I have found, even as recently as Extinction Rebellion, when I raised these issues about poverty, people don't care. I mean, literally one of the co-founders in Extinction Rebellion just said to me, we don't care, we don't do that. It's not us. We're not Black Lives Matter. And I was like, I mean, this is why I ended up leaving, right? But I was there trying to make those points, and I'm quite forceful, as you can see. So I think if anyone's going to make it, I'm going to make it. I've got the experience. I'm going to say it, and I just get it would just get pushed off the table. And after a while, I just thought this doesn't work for me. But there isn't really a space.
Yeah,
It does work.
it's so weird. I mean, yeah, God, I mean, I feel your pain because like I like the environment. Like, I didn't really have much of it growing up, but like when I went to college, I started going on hikes and stuff and kind of appreciating going some trips outside of home and appreciate nature and beauty. And so you think, oh, well, I'm an environmentalist. I want to protect this. But then you get to know environmentalists and you're like, oh God, some of you are awful people. Is that too harsh?
Some of them are the leadership type people, the leaders. That's the problem, because a lot of them are lovely people. I'm still friends with them.
Yeah.
Some of the leaders are where I had clashes where I'd say, what about these ideas? And I'd just be told, we don't talk about that. I actually there were so many issues. And actually, I know Extinction Rebellion reacted quite badly to me kind of going out and saying some of this stuff publicly, but there's a lot that I didn't say, like about this issue where it's not that they didn't understand, it's that they didn't care. They don't care.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. And I'm very outspoken about that now, because I've realized someone needs to be, and I know people take it very personally, but someone needs to say it, and it needs to change. Why are environmental groups so kind of anti-human? It's ridiculous.
Anti-human, that's right, anti-human. And so is this where this whole idea of like eco-modernism or eco-pragmatism comes into play? This is like the people like us who, like environmental stuff, but also like human beings and want to see like humans thrive and prosper and get to enjoy the environmental stuff, and have everyone enjoy it, right? I mean, is that or do you call yourself an eco-modernist then, or?
I actually don't. I mean, I'm very non-tribal. Like, I really don't identify. I don't need the terminology, and I don't like you wouldn't believe how many labels I get put on me. Just anyway, and maybe that is to do with having a double background. Like, just people never know. Is she British? Is she Indian? Is she Punjabi? Is she an immigrant? What's going on? She's speaking a different language. I've always had that kind of like, people just don't know where to put you. For me personally, I just never really ascribed to any group's values. Like, I'm a bit weird like that. I used to be in the Green Party. I used to be very challenging in the party. I used to call things out, and eventually I left because it didn't work out. The same thing happened with Extinction Rebellion, and to be honest, a whole load of other groups in between. This isn't the first time it's happened, and I think that's just because I don't, I am quite challenging, because for me it's more important to look at evidence and be honest and to just discuss things than to just follow the tribe. And that bit where you can't discuss things, I really don't like that. I think it's bad.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so, I mean, this is why, I hear a lot in your message that resonates with me. Some of my favorite, podcasters or like new age journalists, whatever you want to call them, I feel a lot of them, they're like the common theme, but also the recurring theme within every one of their episodes is it's all about communicate. It's all about like having a discussion right? Having a discussion and arriving at the right answer, and not, I don't know if they say this, but maybe I feel this way, not getting so emotionally tied to a position. I mean, it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be passionate. Like, that's great. But then you have to also be able to take a step back from that in order to learn and listen to others. And I don't know, it's kind of a better feeling. Like, I don't know about you, but I feel like I sleep better at night when I've had like more meaningful discussions, maybe even discover that I'm wrong, and just, it's hard, but try to, drop your ego about a topic rather than just fight all day and tell everyone how right your position is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, I made that big change. I made that big whatever U-turn on nuclear, and then people think that's really unusual. Although I think actually it's not as unusual as we think. I think people just are less public about it.
Yes.
I've had a lot of support as well as attacks.
And so that's,
we should normalize. We should normalize being able to change your mind based on evidence. I mean, that's a good thing. That's amazing. I get completely behind that.
Yes, we should normalize being able to change your mind. Yes, that's perfect. So yeah, so Extinction Rebellion. So what is it? They're all about climate change, but don't like nuclear. Is that the idea there?
No, actually, they've got 3 demands. They're very clear, and everything else is up for debate.
Okay.
So, technically you don't have to, there are people in Extinction Rebellion who are pro-nuclear. I think, to be honest, a lot of people have left now anyway, and it's kind of falling apart or whatever. But when I was there, there are people with mixed views on all kinds of different issues. But this is the thing though, right, where this is what the groups say they stand for. But then my experience has been that then so many people in the group have attacked me for being nuclear. There's no way I could have been in Extinction Rebellion and been openly pro-nuclear. So when I went on the Andrew Neil show and he asked me about gas, his very specific question was about, I mean, there were 2 specific questions. I've covered the first one a lot, but the second one was gas. What are we going to do to replace gas? I wanted to say nuclear. So I was already pro-nuclear by that point. I knew there's no way as a spokesperson I could say that, but I also knew if I said renewables, I would have got a pat on the back. Yeah. And I kind of sat there not really knowing what to say, and again just not being able to say anything, and then just going, I just can't be a spokesperson. And they do have an Extinction Rebellion rewilding group, and they have an Extinction Rebellion renewables group. They don't have a nuclear one, and honestly I think no one would dare to do it because you get bullied, and that's where I don't like it, when the discussion is shut down and when you're not allowed to have different opinions, which isn't what they're supposed to be, but that is my experience of what happens.
Have you,
all of these groups, not just there.
Have you taken a step back to try to figure out why that is? Why does saying you like nuclear get you bullied, where saying renewables, and like renewables, okay, so like what are renewables? Are they just talking about like wind and solar, maybe some tidal, hydro, maybe? I mean, is it just this idea that if you say renewables, you're actually not even picking one energy source, so you get to like have that kind of cover fire from the shortcomings of that energy source? But if you say nuclear, yeah, why does that lead to bullying?
You want to know the real answer about what people think when you say renewables? I'm going to go ahead and say this because it's what I used to think a long time ago. Oh, well, it's natural. It comes from the sun.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's natural. It comes from the wind. All natural, And then obviously I started looking into it and went, massive like mining projects, huge infrastructure, factories creating turbines, like massive industry, right? Yeah. This myth will not die. Like, it is the worst myth. Whereas nuclear, people think huge, bad industry, evil corporations. But I've said to people when they've said that, well, what have they done? Name me one thing. Because fossil fuels, right? I can name things where it's been in the news that, they've prevented some climate action somewhere or something else, have lobbied something that I disagree with. But nuclear, actually, I looked into it. I couldn't find anything. So I've kind of gone, what is it? And then they don't have anything. And I kind of go, well, have you looked into renewables? Maybe some of those companies are doing something you don't agree with, but they don't even go that far. They literally don't go beyond thinking, oh, well, it's natural. Yeah. And that it just needs to die. Jonathan Porritt, quite a well-respected writer, long-term environmentalist over here, used to be chair of Friends of the Earth or something back in the day. He just wrote a rather damning piece in The Guardian just a few days ago. And the title, I'm not kidding you, the title is like, we can't agree with these nuclear techno fixes. Solution is renewables. And I tweeted him and I said, like, are you saying that renewables aren't technology? Are you saying that calling for huge mass grid scale, like spread everywhere renewables is not a techno fix? I'm sorry, that's a lie.
Yeah.
Terrible journalism. I mean,
Yep.
he didn't respond. That entire basis of his argument is wrong. It's just
Yeah.
completely, that, and I'm challenging that a lot and finding that people just haven't even thought about it. That's the weirdest thing. Of course they haven't. He didn't think about it. The proofreader didn't think about it. The editor that commissioned it and then put it online didn't think about it. Why am I then having to go, hang on a minute, should we think about this? Is this good journalism? I mean, it's not good journalism, is it?
No.
It's terrible journalism.
It's terrible journalism. And like, I don't understand that either. I mean, like, we've reached out to, like, when we first came to DC and we were just all about advocacy and research. And when we started learning things, and we tried to develop relationships with journalists here in DC. I mean, there's a lot of big media outlets out here, and a lot of them have like dedicated environmental people. I took them out to coffees just to get to know them, put a face to the name. Hey, I'm doing this stuff. Okay, let's keep in touch. And then any time that I wanted to offer any insight that was pro-nuclear, or hey, like, there's another side to renewables that you're not seeing, no response. Not the journalists were not interested in even talking about it. It wasn't like, okay, let's talk this through. Maybe I'll write about it. Maybe I won't. It was like radio silence.
Yeah, I mean, I've said things, and then I can just tell from the conversation the journalist kind of gone, oh, okay, we're not covering that, so it doesn't matter, and I'm trying to say you need to change the entire way that you report on this issue. It's why I made that little video about Fukushima, just kind of doing some myth busting, because the way that it was being reported in a lot of places was just completely inaccurate. But it is, so much of it does come down to this, like, it's to do with feelings, right? It's not to do with evidence. It's not to do with facts. And actually, as you just said, those things don't change people's minds. Feel renewables is like, oh, it's climate friendly and it's wind and sun, I love it. And they feel like, so anti-vaxxers, it's exactly the same thing. Anti-vaxxers feel that, oh, injection, a sharp metal needle,
yeah.
cold, faceless scientists in a lab. That's not what I think of scientists, that's what they think.
Yeah.
Oh, synthetic, non-natural. Are you telling me it's more the fact that a bat bite you and make you sick? I mean, long COVID, it goes on for months, right? Make you really sick. Better because it's natural. I mean, it is natural. Sure, yeah, bat bite you. Okay, sure. That's not good.
Yeah.
Nature's not always good. Let's be really honest about it. But again, you got to get into this depth. People almost are trying to avoid, because if they start to look at them too closely, it challenges who they are and their ideology, and actually they get very defensive. And I've had I get called a lot of names. It's not different. You wouldn't believe it, but it's not different than what I used to get when I first wrote my book. I wrote a book on queen parenting, but it was completely evidence-based. The reason I wrote it is because I was pregnant with my daughter, and every book that I read about how can I live in a green way was just full of woo, like total pseudoscience, like use this homeopathy. I was just like, oh my God, what? I couldn't find a single book. So I went, I'm going to have to write it. So, New Internationals were like, yeah, okay, that's great. Sounds great. No one's done it before. Write it. And it had a chapter on vaccines. So I thought, actually, I've read so much woo about them. I put one in that's just got the facts. And oh man, I had hate mail. I had people saying, I'm going to go and give you 1 star on Amazon because I like the rest of the book, but I don't like the bit on vaccines.
Wow.
I had people saying, you're big for, yeah, literally saying that in my emails. People saying I'm a big pharma shill. Now I get,
Yeah, they always go to the shill, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been here before. I've been in this space before.
You're trained up. You're ready to go. One could say you're vaccinated against the abuse.
It really is the same. I mean, and it is abuse. It is abuse, Brett. Someone last week tweeted me calling me an aggro whore.
Oh my God.
This is acceptable. This is acceptable.
Well, this is why I'm not on Twitter. Like, I can't take it. I mean, you're a lot tougher than I am. I mean, this is why I have so much respect for you. Like, you can actually take the abuse. I just hide away. I'll talk, but won't listen to the public, over Twitter at least. I that's why I like talking at conferences. I deliver a talk at a conference, and then people come up to me one by one for the next hour to debate my opinions, or debate what I said one-on-one. And I'm like, that's a real good interaction, because they're all really smart. They're experts. As a scientific conference, they're experts in the room. I get to have a bit of back and forth. Oh, let me clarify my thinking on that. Or, oh, you made a really good point. I'm actually going to adapt my next speech to that. But the public Twitter, I cannot handle it. I just emotionally cannot handle it.
The problem is, and I understand that completely, the problem is that those people in that room don't influence the decision making as much as these people fighting on Twitter.
Right.
And if they're posting all this nonsense and no one's there challenging it, their nonsense pervades, and that is what happened with nuclear.
Yeah.
No, that, and I'm not going to sit around and take that. And frankly, I feel a little bit guilty that I used to be one of those people. I was never nasty, and I was never that bad. I did used to be on the other side, and now that I'm informed, I think, well, actually, people like me on the other side would have responded to someone like me coming in and having a discussion. So I'm happy to have that, but it does mean that I then have to also just take nasty people shouting that I'm, no, just you wouldn't believe, honestly, you wouldn't believe it. I could write a book about the interactions I have with some people. But sometimes, even then, sometimes they start out quite nasty, and then they calm down and they go away. And you know, I think maybe they've started to think about it, because again, it's so much more about how you make someone feel.
Yep.
Someone's like bashing against you and you're just calm. I mean, it happened really recently with the debate, which you might want to look at it, but it's terrible. I did a debate with Rupert Reed. Do you know who he is?
No, tell me all about it.
Massive anti-nuclear, one of the loudest voices, I would say. You know, that same kind of old school Jonathan Porritt, older man, old school environmentalist. Spoke to us from Extinction Rebellion, used to be a Green Party candidate, you know, very in the fray. Used to work alongside him in Extinction Rebellion. I wrote the newspaper. He was one of my columnists. I edited the newspaper. He was one of my columnists. Oh boy, did he take it personally when I came out as pro-nuclear. Just, I mean, I had to block him on Twitter right away because he was getting quite rough. And I was asked to do this debate on nuclear energy, and I said yes, and it was months ago. And then they kind of emailed me a few weeks ago, and they said, here's your opponent, it's Rupert Reed, here's the time. And I just went, I don't want to go up against this person. And I wouldn't have just done it if it was debate, because I knew he would just shout me down. I mean, that's his style. He's a professor. He's a university professor as well, just so you know. So it was 15 minutes talking. So I thought, well, I can put my points across in the slides and people will see that whatever happens in the debate. He didn't have slides. He just kind of, he spoke off the booth, and then I did 15 minutes. Slides are online. And then the actual debate, if you watch it, you know, I think even if you're anti-nuclear, it's hard to say, oh yeah, I respect Rupert, he did a good job. I had so many, my inbox was flooded with people saying, I'm so sorry you sat through that, and well done, and he's a bully. And if you watch it, honestly, Brett, it's online. He barely lets me finish a sentence. And as you can see, I'm perfectly capable of talking. But I would say, could I just finish my point?
Yeah.
About 20 times. And each time he would shout me down. And I couldn't finish. And I thought, well, that's his best argument. It kind of speaks volume.
And so how does that work? So do you actually end up winning that interaction because people can like read your emotions and see how calm you are and therefore give more credibility? Or?
I think there's a lot in that, because if I just get ragey as well, people just see two stupid ragey people, you know.
Yeah.
I think actually he just comes across as a bit desperate, but also his arguments were poor. You know, if you can't win your argument on merit, of course you're going to start shouting.
Yes.
I'm sure it appeals to a minority of people. But what I would mostly say is just getting in the fray is the important thing. Like, people watch it and go, whoa, you know, went up against him, and I only full well what he could, like, although he was so bad that even the moderator apologized to me afterwards.
Wow.
Because university is now looking at putting in a policy to mute people. Never had to do, because people are saying in the chat, mute him, he's not letting her finish talking, but they didn't have it in their policy. And for the first time they have to consider it because he was that bad. I said to the moderator and the organizer, who also apologized on the phone, obviously, I said, this is what happens if you let anti-nuclear people on board. You wouldn't let an anti-vaxxer on board. And that's basically what I said in my slides, is you shouldn't be having this debate. Scientific consensus on nuclear is completely clear. Why are you having this debate? You know.
Yeah.
And
that I think is part of that I think is part of the problem. I think the structure of any given debate actually, because like who sits through, you know, not too many people like sit through and like listen. Yeah, maybe like really intellectual people who like really want to like dig into stuff. But most people don't. Most people just like read a headline. So if you see a headline of nuclear versus anti-nuclear, it almost to some extent validates the anti-nuclear opinion. I'd almost rather see a series of debates that start off with the premise that we need a massive scale up of nuclear, but it's still like a good debate of like this strategy or this strategy, SMRs versus advanced reactors. Like, I think just that headline, you know, which one of these do we need? SMRs or advanced reactors? Just the implication of reading that headline, like under that message is, oh, we obviously need nuclear. So now it's a matter of like which choice of nuclear. I kind of like that as setting the message.
Completely. And I said that in my slides, and I said, you know, in my presentation, I just said, why can't we move this conversation on? You know, the IPCC says we need about 50%. Why don't we start having a conversation about where they're going to go and who's going to pay for them and how should they be? You know, people are concerned about this. Let's talk about it. We never get to talk about it.
Another good
We're
one.
always stuck. We're stuck in this stupid same argument we've been having for 40 years.
Yes.
No.
Oh, I love that. How are we going to pay for it is almost better because it implies that you need it. And so then if you say how are we going to
We
pay?
do need it.
Yeah.
We do need it. But also, you know, what I make abundantly clear when I do the debates, the thing is the debates will happen whether or not I'm on them. And I know how nasty people can get on the other side. So you know, there's not a lot of people that would do it. So I do them. I always say to the organisers, you know, you need to think about, you wouldn't allow someone on, a homeopathic practitioner or whatever they call themselves, debate a doctor. You wouldn't do it. You know, you wouldn't have an anti-vaxxer debate. It would be seen as irresponsible at this point. You wouldn't have Andrew Wakefield, discredited, stripped of status Andrew Wakefield, coming on and debating an immunologist. You just wouldn't do it. And it is exactly the same. That's not, and the only reason I went on was to do those slides in my presentation, say that very clearly, because, you know, good, then the audience is hearing it, and hopefully some part of that message sinks in. And to be honest, I think he just proved my point, because he was a raving, you know, raving anti-science type person. Honestly, like, none of his arguments held any water, and they sort of just then ended up on build and cost. And I said, but those aren't arguments for science, those are political arguments. It's a different debate. We can have that debate.
Yeah.
You know, let me speak, but which he really didn't. I mean, you could watch it and see the moderator's really struggling, probably 6 or 7 times ask him to let me speak, and he doesn't. Volumes.
It is interesting though. I've never understood. So like the moderator didn't have a mute button, but I do feel like, and maybe this is just in debates in general, like you have a moderator there for a reason. They're there to, like, you know, create a good like experience for the audience. If the moderator doesn't have a mute button, they can walk up to the podium and like tap someone on the shoulder and be like, hey, listen, I'm going to kick you out unless you know, start like respecting the other person. Why don't they do that? I feel like moderators never have any balls. I don't get it.
I mean, I complained to them, and that's pretty much what I said. I said, you have a freedom of speech policy. Rupert and I both read it. You allowed that to be compromised.
Yeah.
But I said, I mean, they apologise. You know, what more can they do? And now they're going to consider the way they do things going forward. But frankly, they should not have debates like that going forward. And this is no different than when I started out in Extinction Rebellion, and they did do lots of things that were very effective. And one of the things we did was we went to the media and we said, why do you on the BBC have a climate denier debating a climate scientist? This is wrong.
Yeah.
Consensus is that, I mean, we did good stuff that we did, and why I really like being involved in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, this is wrong. There is a consensus. You have to stop doing it. They changed their policy.
It worked.
Because it worked. We went and blockaded their doors. People super glued on. It was all over the news. I don't know how much it reached outside of the UK, but it was like all over our news. They invited some people from the media, Tell the Truth group in XR, to go in and talk to them. And they said, you know, they just made the same points I'm making now. And they convinced them. And then slowly things like climate emergency, climate and ecological crisis, all that wording that came from Extinction Rebellion, from the media team, just became, now it's normal language. Net zero came from Extinction Rebellion. You know, I know lots of people have lots of criticisms of them, but they did do a lot of good work. And I'm completely, you know, behind that. We did great work. And now the Prime Minister here has put net zero into a plan which had never happened before. That happened because of us. It's because we helped to change the dialogue.
Okay,
we got in the fight, you know, and same thing's got to happen for nuclear.
Okay, I was literally going to say, you know what my next question is?
I'm doing it. I'm in there.
Okay, well,
I'm in the trenches. Send some frontline support.
Okay.
Frontline supporters.
So can we talk actually a little bit about the logistics? Like, how many people were in the Extinction Rebellion, or how many people were Extinction Rebellion able to like rally together to like, you know, chain themselves to stuff? And can nuclear do the same? And how many people can we actually gather to convince the BBC to like, can we change the framing of the debate from not like, should we have nuclear or not nuclear, but like, should we have 70% nuclear or 90% nuclear?
But so a few things. One thing is, I don't think that Extinction Rebellion strategy of mass arrest worked. They did have over 1,000 people arrested through the rebellions. Wow. The entire strategy was dependent on getting something like, I think it was like 3.5% of the population. It's like 2 million people. It didn't work, right? So that strategy didn't work. And actually, I think it would never have worked. It was not was too niche. There's just a very niche group of people that are willing to do that and go to jail, but it's not going to fill the jails. It's not going to do what happened during Martin Luther's, campaign. That's the model that it was based on by people that came up with that before I came on board.
Yep.
My strategy was always more media. How do we go out in the media? And that's why I founded an entire newspaper, because we're not reaching people. We're just on social media all the time. We're just reaching echo chamber. How do we get out of the echo chamber? So we printed at the height, it's a monthly newspaper. I think at the height we had about 180,000 printed on recycled paper, and it was distributed purely. And just to recap, so it's called the Hourglass, and it was completely like a group inception, but I completely led it. I was the editor. I literally had to work with the designer to have each page designed. It didn't exist before. A logo made, got the arts people to help with the logo, and got stencils printed, and then got all the writers on board and got illustrators to go in kind of like little adverts slots, because we didn't want actual adverts. And so it had the format of the newspaper, and it didn't really have Extinction Rebellion branding, because it wasn't about that. It was about climate reporting and showing what it could look like if you just, focus on issues. And I always made sure that I put in stuff like, let's talk about Indigenous rights. I had that on the front cover, of the number of forest defenders that get killed, all the things, homelessness even, and how it's impacting them, how changing climate impacts them, and rates go up when there's more extreme, events, and all kinds of stuff. So it got, had a very broad piece of coverage. As I say, Rupert had a column in there, and then it would go out. So it would be printed once a month. Like volunteers around the country would take that day off, have that day off ready to go, and they'd pick up these giant pallets in like 10 locations. They get 10,000 copies, and then they would distribute them to their local groups, who would then put them in libraries, in doctor surgeries, stand outside. Obviously, this is all pre-pandemic. Stand outside tube stations, train stations, handing them out.
I didn't
take
know
them onto university campuses
anymore. This is so great.
This is what I did. Yeah, this is what I did. I'm quite grassroots. And but the best thing for me was in the letters, people that wrote in. And I had people in care homes saying, please, whoever put this through my door, please put it through again. I found it really interesting, and I didn't know this stuff, and I don't really watch television or whatever. And some groups, they hadn't even heard of Extinction Rebellion. Some people didn't really know much about climate. It really was reaching, just completely reaching outside of the echo chamber, which was the point for me, because I wasn't doing it to be in this little protected tribe. It's not really my thing. I'm more right, how do we get the message out there? And it ran, basically ran until the pandemic, which killed it, because you couldn't distribute it anymore. The entire model was just volunteers on the street would just get rid of so many copies through the door. I mean, I went out and did it in my area. I just post them through each person's door, so it was quite exciting. And I can't remember where we got onto this, but we did good things. And that was funded by Extinction Rebellion. I couldn't have done it if they hadn't given donations to do it and agreed, signed off on me doing it.
And so where this was going was, how do we translate some of these lessons about, how do you do effective communication? How do you do effective grassroots campaigning, and translate that, to nuclear advocacy?
Yeah, so what I was going to say is I wouldn't use the same models, and I was quite critical of a lot of those models, especially the mass arrest, because I think that's a very privileged position, and that actually, for a lot of people that is just not an option. And I know from just growing up and the way my brother experienced, hassle from not even necessarily police, like security guards and stuff like that, when you go out clubbing, it's a different space. And actually people started to speak
it's somewhat violent. The problem is it brings the concept of, even if it's passive, and they're the ones doing the violence, it brings violence into the conversation.
So I think because I think also language was always a bit militant for me, and it was only ever going to be quite niche. And I'd sit in these messaging meetings, where we'd be coming up with I wasn't leading them. I led on the paper. That was it. I was in these meetings. I would help contribute, come up with phrases, and they'd have stuff like "everybody now." We're going to have on our posters "everybody now," and that's what they had. I just sit there thinking, that's not enough to get if your strategies don't appeal to them, that's not going to work. And then when research was done a little bit later, after it had been around for about a year, research found that it was predominantly older, white, middle class people. It's just fact.
Yeah.
And they're almost, I think it was something like 70% of them were Green Party members. It's very niche.
Yeah.
Very niche. That's not even not even the major party here. So never reached that everybody now. And I think actually it was a little bit arrogant to just say, well, if we keep saying it, happen? Well, no, why don't you talk about actually how to engage your communities? Why don't you go out and speak to other groups and ask them what they want to do and do more of a bottom-up grassroots model rather
Yeah.
than a prescriptive top-down? So it was a bit like, I don't know if you know about old and new power model.
No.
Really interesting. So there's a whole book on it that's really interesting, that's worth reading. Basically, a lot of things are becoming more new power now. Even like things like Apple, the way that the employees work, they get to give more feedback, because they started to do it. Wanted to do it, and the employees responded, and now they're much more part of the organization. Lots of different companies have done it. Trying to think of other examples. Reddit's a really good example, very user-led. But Facebook's the opposite, right? Facebook's like top down, they make changes, everybody gets annoyed. Why have they changed this? They haven't given us any notice, they've just decided they're going to add this thing. We just kind of had to go with it. And actually, as a result, Facebook's completely just, if you look at the stats, like it's dying, hardly anyone uses it. Things that are on the up are more the like user-led things, like Reddit. You just saw what happened with Reddit, right?
No.
With that guy and the what was it, the blockchain thing? Did you see that?
No, what was that?
I can't remember his name. He started a campaign to buy a load of stocks, was it?
Oh yes. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the Reddit stock thing where they did the short sell type thing.
And people just jumped in, and it's very, and you can't control the new power. That's the thing. And I think it's great because it's people led. Of course, it's great. And I read this really good book about how lots of things are going in that direction. And that actually one thing that brought Trump to power was that he did that. Kind of let these groups have this autonomy. And XR, I think we tried to do that in the beginning by saying groups can go and do this so long as they abide by the principles, but actually it was very prescriptive, even down to what branding you could use was very prescriptive. Strategies were very prescriptive. You couldn't really deviate from those. And I think that was always going to make it peter out.
And so is there a different cohort that we can organize? Like, I didn't grow up with much money. I think of myself as more blue collar anyway. I kind of like the blue collar type stuff. And so I've never really, felt super comfortable around like the upper middle class and the like elitist values. And so I'd almost rather build a cohort of more blue collar folks to champion.
Yeah, I mean, this has been one of my arguments. I've written about this for Nuclear, which is that it brings jobs.
Yeah.
And if you say no to all these industries, you're saying no to jobs, for all kinds of working class people. And again, that's another argument that I bring in, and then it's like there's just silence in the room. It's not even a schema. It's not even on these people's radars. They don't understand the experience. Whereas my parents were very working class. They worked in factories. They literally, I mean, what a better way as well to integrate immigrants than literally helping build country.
I know.
My mum used to make pots and pans, and then my
Gives
brother became an engineer, and he helped to make some of the biggest structures in the UK. These are really like, integrative. This is brilliant.
I know, it's so brilliant. I remember reading about this this government project where it was the slums of, I don't know, some country, maybe Brazil or something. And instead of the government just coming in and building houses for everyone, they came in and they built just like one room and maybe like left like a stack of bricks. And like bricks are like currency in some communities. Like when you get some extra money, you don't actually have a bank, so you gotta like buy a brick, and that is like your stored value of sense. And then people are like literally building their houses, and then it's not just like government housing that you just like tear apart and don't care about. No, like you have a sense of ownership. And so I can see how that same idea applies to like giving immigrants jobs and build the country.
Yeah, a sense of ownership, but there's also just something that brings people together that I don't think a lot of these people that I've spent time around in these green groups, I don't think they get it because it's not their background.
Yes.
Whereas I saw the way, when you work on a shift all day, it is hot, it's hard work. You're on your feet, and my dad got like damage from picking up heavy boxes all the time. As back in the 80s, they didn't have the same health and safety regulations. My mum lost a hearing one year because the machinery was so loud. Where she was sewing things all day, 8-hour shifts, and then they do night shifts as well. It was a real sense of community.
Yep.
And then you go and you have lunch and you break bread together, and you're a bit like, oh, well, what's he eating? It's a bit weird. It's a chapati. It's not. And you'd be like, yeah, this is our bread. And it worked. It really did. It worked. It created a bond. And people say to me, this is a real concern of people on the left, right? They say, oh, it's becoming very whatever racist or separatist, or like don't like immigrants. I'm like, but this is the way you bring people together. They work together, they form solid communities, you know, they have each other's back. If we're eroding that, which we are here, we've just, most of our industry is just gone, completely outsourced. You can talk about getting solar panels. Where are they coming from? They're coming from China. We don't really build anything here anymore. We don't have those communities. Of course, that's going to happen. And actually, we don't have enough jobs. The unemployment's higher than it has been ever since I was, you know, born. Of course, people are going to turn against each other and say, well, he looks a bit different and he's got a job and I haven't. I mean, this is just common sense. You know, again, I'm saying it, and I think people who just always had a cushy job and their dad had a cushy job, you know, and they come from a line of cushy jobs, and I'm a university professor with a cushy job and I have 3 houses, you know, they can't understand it. And for me, it's problematic that they have become leaders of this movement. And actually, then all the other stuff we talked about, all the issues exist. Of course, they exist if these are the leaders.
Yeah,
they're short-sighted and they don't represent most people.
Yeah.
Yet most people that I speak to care about environment and they care about climate change.
Yeah.
They're not in these groups. So what's happening? Something's happening there.
Okay, so how do we take all these instances? I mean, you laid out an extremely compelling argument. What do we do with it now?
I'm launching a new campaign.
Okay, tell me about.
I'm launching a new campaign. It's
what's it called?
It's called Emergency Reactor.
Emergency?
There is a climate emergency. We need an emergency reactor. We need to build them everywhere. Build, more, not less.
Amazing.
We need to focus on
emergency reactor. It don't, like, people might come to it thinking something else, and then is that like part of the draw? Like it's like a little bit of a gotcha, like a headline where it's like you're not sure which way this is going.
It is. But also, you know, you talk about climate change or poverty or anything, you want a reaction, right?
Yes.
You don't just want talk. I'm bored of talk. I sit on Twitter talking all day. What are we going to do for action? And we're going to do actions, you know, not like it's like going to get people arrested that put them off. Hopefully it'll be user-led, so people who get involved and say, I want to do this action. And I was like, right, let's try and get the troops to sit squabbling on all day. Let's see if they'll actually get up and come out and do it, you know. And that also is a really good way to get press.
Yep.
You know, which is a big issue here, is that our press is quite broadly anti-nuclear on the left and the right.
Yeah. So, okay. So what is Emergency Reactor going to do? Give me some concrete goals that you have set out.
Right. We are launching Emergency Reactor. Go to emergencyreactor.org. There are going to be lots of different fun actions that you should hopefully see all across the news, although it is hard to get coverage. I have done some pro-nuclear protests before, and some papers have just completely ignored them. Others, I have managed to get them to report. You know, this is the thing, right? If you go and glue yourself to something, you probably will get, you know, everywhere. And maybe at some point I'll end up doing that. We're starting off, you know, just I'm doing a university tour in April. So I'm speaking at like, I think it's one university a week for 10 weeks.
Amazing.
And and it's about how the green movement has made issues worse. It's how the green movement has helped poverty and climate change to get worse.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe
is it going to, I mean, COVID is still like going on, and that kind of stops a lot of like the in-person interaction.
Yeah.
Are we going to just wait for a few months and like maybe just organize for a few months and then get some people to do stuff when
well, that's the thing, because of the restrictions, it's very different now, but there are lots of digital actions. So we're going to have like a take action button, make it super easy. You click on the button, you select whichever green organization you want, whoever you want to go after, and then it's a standard letter saying, I'm emailing you, asking you to stop opposition of climate action, which is nuclear energy, signed. And I'm also launching a video, should probably come around, it might already be out around this time, but the video I'm just going to call on, I'm going to say, this is emergencyreactor.org. The first thing we're asking people to do, if you have a membership, the RSPB, or if you don't know that it's the Royal Society for Protection of Birds, protesting, very heavily protesting Sizewell Power Station, even though I do understand that, like, funny about their land use, like, you know, they have done it to be fair with renewables as well, but in the past, they allowed a gas plant at Salcombe, at their reserve in Salcombe a few years ago. So, you know, if they get enough money, apparently. But the nuclear, they're really heavy campaign, they got it against it. So anyway, I'm calling on people to just cancel their membership, because if you are subscribing and giving money to these organizations, you are preventing climate action.
Yeah. Okay. Write-in letter campaigns. That's a good one. I mean, the World Bank needs to be on that list too. I can't believe the World Bank like has a prohibition against funding nuclear, or like the International Finance Corporation, which is a part of the World Bank, prohibition against nuclear makes absolutely no sense.
Exactly. There's so many, and then there also an option to email email your local MP to ask what their opinion is, what their stance is. If you're a member of a political party, ask them. I mean, obviously the Greens are anti, but some of the groups, even like Labour and the Lib Dems, I think they are pro, but they're very quietly pro, because again, it's just this contentious issue. You wouldn't be like that about climate change. Now they're all shouting climate emergency. We need to catch up with the science, with reality, with facts. There'll be lots of campaigns like that, so you can kind of pick and choose and go, right, this is just really easily laid out for me. Which bit am I going to do? Right, I have a Devon Wildlife Trust card. I saw their CEO saying that nuclear is bad for the environment. I'm going to cut up my card right now, because actually that's what people need to be doing, and you don't have to go and glue yourself to anything to be able to do that,
And then, but how do you get people to come to the website? That's another thing. Like in marketing, we call it like top of the funnel. Like, how do you even get people to the point where they can then read your content and decide to take action? University tours, okay, you can maybe get like a room of 100 people, maybe 50 of them are passionate about it and go to the website. You do those once a week. Okay, maybe that's like 5,000 people you're able to line up over a few months or years.
Yeah.
What else? How else do you get people to come?
Well, there's lots of different strategies. So the university tour is an interesting one, because when I asked at universities, all the kind of pro-nuclear people are like, come and speak. We'd love to have you speak. And I said no, because I'm just speaking in an echo chamber.
Right.
What I've gone for is the climate action groups.
Yeah.
Every group I'm speaking at is a climate action group.
Amazing.
And obviously some of them don't respond, and they're not going to, but we need to normalize it and make it okay to have this opinion. And maybe it'll backfire. Maybe there'll be a cancel culture thing happen, but good, then that will blow the lid off of the entire, because that's what happened, right? That's what happens. You talk about nuclear in the environmental space, you get cancelled. I'm going right up against that, but I'm hopeful, because no one's done it before. Like the scientists tend to keep on the science side. There's not a lot of integration going on here. So I'm going to these younger people who actually don't tend to have old school environmentalist fears of nuclear, and just take the facts to them and then say, are you going to get on board? If you're talking about climate action and you're not standing for nuclear, then you're standing for nothing. That's the reality of it. On board, I'm in the fray. I get called a whore. I get called turncoat scum in my inbox. You wouldn't believe. Nasty stuff. But it is no different than when I was standing for vaccination years ago. I helped to shift that debate. Now,
so you feel pretty confident you can
pretty
do
normal
it
that people go, oh no, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I'm not a flat earther, and then I'm like, are you anti-nuclear though? Because you know what, it's not that different.
Oh, I love that. I love
that.
That's great. Loop in anti-nuclear with flat earther. That's perfect.
But I don't need to loop it in. It's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the absolute truth. So I've got a video coming out on exactly that. You'll be glad to know. It's quite well produced, as in, well, I mean, it's not produced. I did it at home. It's copied. It's good quality, and I think someone to help me edit it. It's just volunteers at the moment. We have got a bit of funding for stuff though, and I'm hoping more will come in, and we'll get donations from people. But mainly, so he's editing it to make it a bit more, wow in your face. But those are the messages. But the messages, I really worked on that script and honed it and thought, what would I have responded to when I was anti-nuclear? What do people need to hear, and what are the facts? Really straight up facts, not like messing around. And that's going to go live. So if any one of these so I've got like the talks, and then I've got the videos, any one of those kind of goes viral, that's going to drive traction to the website. So
that's amazing. Oh my God, I love.
There's lots of stuff. There's so much stuff. But the main thing is, Brett, the reason why I'm hopeful is because I know that no one's ever done that in this space. So I hear all these engineers and activists,
low-hanging fruit.
I hear a lot of stuff from them, like constantly, even just today, like someone on Twitter, like pulling me in. And actually there are often like older men who are engineers, a very like specific demographic. Say, oh, well, I've been saying this for years. Oh, well, that's not gonna work.
I get a lot of
like,
that too.
I'm like, you can say that, but no one like me has existed in this space before. So let's see.
Yeah, so I am actually curious about that. So here's something I've never understood. People go home. A lot of people go home, I don't know, like 5 or 6. Like I work pretty late, but most people go home at 5 or 6. And then they've got what, like 5 hours of like time on their hands. I guess most people watch TV. I understand watching TV or, Netflix or something, especially like when it's a great show. But what I never understood is you've always got that garbage show that, you shouldn't be watching. It's just a waste of your time. It's just a total mental drain. Like, why not replace that time of your day with like getting hyped up about like doing something, like write that letter in, send that banana. Like so I guess what I'm asking is there a way to capture some of that time, even if it was only 1% of the population that spent their worst TV show time taking action. Like, is it possible to get that?
I mean, I think the reason people watch stuff like that is because it's easy and they're exhausted, you know?
Yeah.
I always said in Extinction Rebellion, when we used to celebrate successes and say, we're so mainstream, I'd say, you'll know when it's mainstream when it's on EastEnders. It's like one of the most widely watched programs here. It is just turn off telly. It's a soap opera. I used to watch it when I was a kid. It's very working class.
Yeah.
It's still going. I don't watch it now. But it used to be a big part of, like, you eat dinner when it's on. This was normal when I was growing up. Normal in working class households, and it is just kind of background. It's just, I actually you say that about maybe it feeling like a waste of time, but actually gossip is like an evolutionary thing, right?
Yeah.
Gossip is really important. That's why people do it. It used to bring a tribe together, and actually, isn't it better that you do it about make-believe characters than your neighbors?
Yeah, that is true.
So, like, I understand it serves a purpose. When you get your message on there, when someone talks about Chernobyl on there in a positive context, not in a positive context, but in a truthful context, or about nuclear energy in a truthful context, you know that you've actually just won the debate. And actually, they have talked about climate on there now, but before, it was just not a thing. It was, Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for the Future helped to change that. And you have to think that they've been around, 2 years? Not very long at all. They come onto the screen, and I worked in the group, so I saw that it was not a massive movement. It was a core of very dedicated small movement with lots of volunteers, and that just spread around the world, and that model spread around the world, and they achieved a lot.
And that's what I'm thinking is, like, how do you get a lot of volunteers? Because you can build a core of very dedicated people. Like, you get to interact with a lot of people, you meet a lot of smart people, you're going to be at universities, you're going to find people who just want to get involved because they feed off your energy, and and what you're saying makes sense to them. And so I have no doubt you're going to get that core. Then the question still in my mind is, how do you get the lot of volunteers? That's where I'm still
Well,
I still would
the
like
bit
to
that interests me, the reason I'm speaking at climate groups, is because I think it's those groups that need to be doing it, right? I think actually this is something that's happened with Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for the Future, and Greta, who I have a lot of respect for, kind of stalled with their messaging, and their messaging is just stuck at act now.
Yeah.
And that it's kind of stalled. They don't lead people. So Greta doesn't really lead people to solutions.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm sorry, but most politicians, they need leading.
Yeah.
They do not have scientific background.
Yeah.
They don't. They do need that leading, and they look at what's happening in society. So they look at, if all they see at Sizewell is lots of protests against it, then they're going to go, well, all the news clippings are against it. Let's definitely not do that. And that's actually the reality of what's happened. So we need people on the other side standing for this climate solution. So I want to move it from that act now, which is literally a phrase that came from Extinction Rebellion. React now. What are we actually going to do? Because those tangible things are the things that are going to ensure that my daughters have a decent future, that I don't have to tell them in 10 years that all their relatives in India had to migrate. We don't know where they are. These are horrible stories which are true, completely true stories. Those people they're rice farmers. My family in the Punjab, they're rice farmers in a little village outside of Mandi. No one knows where it is. It's nothing. Barely has a wiki page, and they're already experiencing drought. So often that they're struggling. Yeah, my parents could send them money. What, they're going to buy water? Do you know what I mean? Like, where they're going to go to Tesco? They don't have Tesco's. They go 4 hours to the nearest airport. They don't have a Tesco's. That's a shopping.
No, I know. I mean, this is what I say when I give talks on climate. Like, because at first maybe I came across as very alarmist, and I do think it's like a lot of bad stuff is going to happen, but I don't think it's going to happen to the rich people. I think the rich people will adapt, and it's going to happen slow, even if it happens fast. Like, even if the climate totally transforms over 100 years, that is slow enough that the rich people will adapt to their lifestyles and not even know that they've adapted. Like, but I'm worried about the poor people. I mean, like,
there's a good phrase for it, which is interesting actually, because I think it happened with Extinction Rebellion. In the start, they used to say, we're all in the same boat. That was like one of the slogans, and they got kind of pulled up, I think, actually by kind of the younger generation, which was the Fridays for the Future. He said, we're not in the same boat. We're in the same storm. We're not in the same boat.
That's right. Where, yeah,
And
computer robots.
that's something you don't often hear in the green
It's
movement.
so
And
true, 'cause
that's what emergency reactor is going to have that in its core messaging. Like, we completely recognize that and it's not, that's why I'm not really just saying my kids are going to have a bad future. I actually think my kids, apart from like eco-anxiety, which seems to be sweeping through in general, I think they're going to be well provided for. They're really lucky. And because I come from that poor background, I recognize how lucky they are and how much they have. And I always say this to them. I think I'm going to sound like an old person with like, what is she on about? We have enough food to eat and we have a nice warm hat. They have no idea.
Send them back to India for a summer. Make them live in that.
Oh God, they're gonna have that whole. Well, it's sad, isn't it? It's sad what's happening out there. And now they've got these farmers' protests over what they're able to grow, and part of that is because it's harder to grow rice. It takes so much
And the
water.
suicides too. I've heard something like tens of thousands or some insane number of suicides from farmers that literally, because of drought, just can't provide for their family. When I first heard that, I lost it. Like, I literally couldn't believe that was reality.
It's horrible. It's really tough. But you think they're already such a tough way to eke out a living, but at least you can get food, And if you can't even do that, then what have you got? It's really terrible. But then I say to people, look, there are solutions. Desalination, that could be a solution, but you know what you need? Loads of energy.
Lots of energy.
Loads of. Every time I look at any solution, it goes. It's not. I start with ending of the hypothesis, which is I want energy. Every time I look at a problem, the solution tends to be lots of energy, abundant energy.
I know, it's so funny, especially with the desalination argument. What people don't realize, I think it's something like, when we desalinate water, like I looked at the plant in San Diego or something, and it was something like 50 cents per cubic meter. And I'm like, a cubic meter of water is a lot of water, and 50 cents isn't that much money. So it's actually not even really a money question. It's an energy question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A whole of the discussion. See, these are the things I'd like to be discussing on these debates, but we don't even get there because all we get, where we get stuck on this loop of Fukushima, Chernobyl, and and then sometimes they move across from that to cost, build time, and I'm like, I'm just gonna bring some big scissors here and just snip that loop. I'm bored of that loop, and let's not pass that loop on to younger generation. Shouty professor people, take it. That's why I want to go and talk to the students and just be like, so here are the facts. So if you hear these shouty other people over there, you might want to fact check it first.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, as we wrap up here, I want to give you kind of like the final word on, we usually like to wrap up with, where you see things going in the future. If everything were to work out, we always like to end on an optimistic tone. So maybe like look out 5-10 years for me and just kind of like paint the picture of the world that you see.
Paint the picture of the world that I see. We are building lots of new reactors. We don't have a 60% fossil fuel mix anymore. We're as close to zero as possible, or anything that's left over. We've got amazing carbon capture technology that's, sounding really idealistic, I know. It's sucking that up, so it's not a problem. We stop. So here, it's very problematic. The whole issue is very problematic. But we've even funneled money out of aid, like aid money that we send overseas, into climate action, and I'm just like, no. So we're helping, other countries to develop and to get what they need. I think that has to be part of it. Actually, let's just recognize that, we kind of helped cause the problem. So it's okay. Even if we didn't, it's okay to help them. There's lots of people. So the numbers, 10, 15 years, the numbers show that so many people have been lifted out of poverty. It's incredible news. Then I go to my daughters and I'm like, hey, good news. I don't have to tell you really awful things. And your cousins in India, they're doing great. They don't have to cook on a little wood fire anymore, and your auntie gets medication for her asthma, so she's not likely to die from it any day soon, because they now have a local hospital. And then that will bring things like teachers, which they can't get out in the villages because no one wants to live there when there's no electricity. These people get bit by snakes, for goodness sake. It's massive, actually, the numbers of people that get killed from snake bites, because there's no hospitals to deliver the anti-venom. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's just no access. Now I know, by the way, why my parents always wanted me to be a doctor. Indian parents always want you to be a doctor. Now I know why.
It's to avoid snake bites.
Over there, the difference between life and death. That will change. They won't be saying that anymore. They'll be like, I want you to work at a nuclear plant. You know why? Because if you work at a nuclear power plant, you are a climate hero. You help to bring down emissions. That's what I want to see happen.
Amazing.
In a nutshell.
Xeon Light, thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you.
time. This
And
is just so much fun talking with you. You get me more energized than anybody, so I cannot wait till our next conversation.
Yes, and also emergencyreactor.org.
Yes.
Please go, please sign up, take one little action today. You can help make a difference.
Awesome.
And initiate at least a new approach to the many difficult problems that must be solved in both private and public conversation if the world is to shake off the inertia imposed by fear and is to make positive progress toward peace.